Hello, and welcome to Read the Bull, the only podcast dedicated to finance and investing books. I'm your host, Stefan Prelog, and today I'm thrilled to welcome Zeke Faux. Zeke is a Bloomberg investigative reporter and the author of Number Go Up, Inside Crypto's Wild Rise and Staggering Fall. Zeke's an investigative reporter for Bloomberg Business Week and Bloomberg News. He's a winner of the Gerald Loeb Award and the American Bar Association's Silver Gavel Award and a National Magazine Award finalist. He lives in Brooklyn with his wife and 3 children. Welcome, Zeke.
Thanks, Stefan.
Thanks for being here. So I should say the book was published last year. We have now the paperback edition out, and it was published by Crown Currency, which is, I looked, and Crown is actually currency, the official currency of the Czech Republic.
So, I'm going to tell my editor that.
So we're getting a little tie-in to the whole currency issue. So I have to first, praise you. This is an amazing book. It is so thoroughly reported. So it's about cryptocurrency, and I'll say, I haven't interviewed any crypto authors yet. One, because I don't think there have been, until your book came out late last year, a lot of books on crypto. They've always been kind of, very basic or promotional. Your book is just a wild ride, thoroughly reported, but it has an interesting beginning. So tell me a little bit about your background at Bloomberg and investigative reporter, because you weren't always a crypto reporter. So tell me a little about your background.
Yeah. During this whole crypto boom, I would look around at some of these. I'd be at like Sam Bankman-Fried's big crypto conference, and I would think, this is, whatever happens with this is a really exciting moment in history. Am I really the only one who's here to chronicle this?
Right.
I guess I am. I better do a good job. Yeah, I was resistant to going into the crypto world.
Okay.
When at Bloomberg, my specialty is writing about scams or financial fraud. And I'd done penny stocks. Mm-hmm. I'd done kind of this new form of loan sharking was a special interest of mine.
Yeah.
But what appeals to me about them is kind of things in gray areas. Like, I like to look at the fine print and figure out how the trick works, why they think it's maybe legal, and then expose that to the world. And with crypto, I felt like it was so transparent, there was nothing for me to expose.
Right.
People were just saying, and this is like during the pandemic, everyone's trapped at home, GameStop and AMC are going crazy, and people were buying all sorts of random coins. And it felt like, any like tech guy with credibility, with any sort of name, or even like a third-rate celebrity, and this is pretty much still the case, could be like, buy my coin, it's great, and a bunch of people would go buy it. And it just didn't feel like there was something for me to unpack there. But I got through this pandemic. Some of my best company was on this group chat with a bunch of buddies from high school. On the group chat, a friend of mine started talking about something that he called doggy coin.
Right.
And he was saying, I can see some buzz on the internet about this. I think the price is going to go up. Maybe like Elon Musk is going to endorse it. I like to think that I'm the guy who knows about this stuff. Sure. I'm like the financial guy. And I said, it doesn't do anything. It's called, by the way, it's Dogecoin. That's, I'm the expert.
You didn't even pronounce it right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how he pronounced it on a text. Maybe he even spelled it doggy coin. But this went on for like weeks, and he would send us all updates about the price and the increasing buzz. And at the end, he sold his doggy coin and made thousands of dollars, and went on a trip to Disneyland and sent some pictures from the trip and said, I am freaking Nostradamus. If you had followed my advice, you'd all have a couple $1,000 too. And I thought, it's kind of silly, but this argument I think got under both of our skins, because, and it wasn't so much that he made this money and I didn't. Right. I really like being right. Maybe I should have just let it go. Right. But I was like, I know there's nothing to these cryptocurrencies.
Right.
How is it that people are making real money on it? And it wasn't just like my friend making money. There were guys who were becoming overnight millionaires, billionaires. So I was pretty skeptical, but I thought, this can't be all there is. There has to be something else to it. So I was more, and I also really wanted to be right. So I got, I was more open to this idea that I could that crypto was a thing to investigate after this argument.
So is this whole book just to prove Jay wrong? Partially?
I mean, it's not so far off.
Okay.
I mean, it goes in many different directions.
Right. So we'll say, and you did point out, a lot of the reporting in here were published pieces along the way in Bloomberg and Bloomberg Business Week. So as you're reporting, a lot of this source material gets used into the book.
Yes. And so I had this argument. I got an assignment from my editor, Joel Weber at Business Week.
Okay.
And I started to dive into this crypto world. So I'm coming in pretty skeptical. I honestly thought it was pretty dumb. And as I learned more about it, I realized that, first of all, it was even dumber than I had originally thought. But second of all, it was having actually like a big impact all around the world. It wasn't just sort of a game it wasn't just a game for people to gamble on the internet.
Right.
This was something that brought me to the Philippines, where this crypto craze, attracted millions of people, and lots of people were investing their life savings in it.
Right.
To Cambodia, where there was
it gets dark. It gets dark. Let's hold on to that, because we're gonna get into that.
Okay.
All right, because I will say it's a wild ride. You do some of the really fun stuff. I'll say the first half of the book, you're going to crypto conferences. You're in Miami, the Bahamas, some right here in New York City, and then you get to go. You're following the trail all around, and then you do go to places, Philippines, Cambodia. You visit Vietnam, and then El Salvador too, which we'll talk about. It is a winding road, but it starts with this investigation into Tether. So just for the people who maybe don't have the sophistication, just explain Tether and why you started to look into it.
Tether is what's known as a stable coin. That means, unlike other cryptocurrencies, the price is not supposed to go up. It's supposed to, each Tether is supposed to be always worth $1 because it's backed by a real dollar in the bank somewhere. Okay. So how it works basically is that you send, your real dollar to Tether. They issue you one Tether token. You can go take that token and gamble in the crypto casino with it. When you're done, you send your real money, you send your Tether tokens back to Tether.
Right.
They're supposed to have held on to the dollar, and they'll give it back to you. And so when I started looking into this, there were more than 50 billion Tether tokens outstanding.
Wow.
Which meant that
50 billion.
Yes.
Okay.
It's now more than 100.
Okay.
So that Tether was supposed to have $50 billion in the bank somewhere to back up these tokens. And this was the cryptocurrency that had traded more than any other cryptocurrency. And as I talked to people in crypto, I realized that it was really central to the whole crypto economy.
Right.
It's kind of the way that crypto traders moved large amounts of money around the world. Mm-hmm. Originally, a lot of these crypto companies had trouble accessing the banking system.
Yeah.
And relied on Tether instead. So it's sort of like if all the, casinos all around the world sent all the gamblers to one window to buy their chips.
Got it. That was Tether.
That's Tether.
Okay.
So I learned it's really central, but at the time there was a lot of chatter out there that was like, wait, who are these guys? Do they even really have this $50 billion? Right. And
that's a good question.
Yeah. And I started looking into it.
Yeah.
And the people involved were just totally bizarre. One of the guys who came up with the idea was, have you ever seen the Mighty Ducks?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So
this is amazing.
Yeah. So in the Mighty Ducks, at the beginning, there's a flashback. Mm-hmm. Coach Gordon Bombay is a child, and he misses a crucial penalty shot. Mm-hmm. That child actor, Brock Pierce, became a big crypto investor and was one of the founders of this Tether company.
So he made some money and it was really early a crypto guy, and then somehow became a co-founder of Tether.
Yes. I mean, it's
bizarre.
In the early days, there weren't that many people with real money to invest in sort of crypto adjacent ventures.
Sure.
So he was one of the few. The CEO, Jean-Louis Vandervelde, was seen in public so little that some people speculated he was not a real person and didn't exist. The company was based nowhere. I was told that the real power behind Tether was the CFO, Giancarlo Di Vicini, who was an Italian guy. You Google him, Again, he'd never given an interview. He didn't go to the crypto conferences. One of the things I found was this great photo. He had posed for a exhibition, and it was about turning points in life. And he had half his face had shaving cream. He was like shaving his face, staring at the mirror. And he'd written this little, or there was a little interview with him or essay that he'd written next to it, where he said he was a plastic surgeon.
Okay.
And he realized, he's like, my whole life is a scam, and I don't believe in plastic surgery.
Oh my God.
And like that's just the start of his resume. So these guys were running what was essentially like, the central bank of crypto,
right?
And yet very little was known about them. And so I thought, this is my kind of target. I can look into these guys' history. I can try and see, do they really have this money? And it, I think, would be significant. And I realized actually, as I was looking into it, Janet Yellen had called a meeting of all of the top financial regulators in the US where they were discussing Tether. And according to, they're talking about like, do they have the money? What would happen if Tether collapses? Could this cause a financial crisis in the regulated financial industry?
Right.
So I'm like, on the one hand, this is like what I found time and time again with crypto. On the one hand, it's very silly, but on the other hand, there could be like serious consequences.
If it fails, the whole system could go down.
Yeah.
And impact like real people with real money. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And this guy, so the people behind it, usually think of founders of these, financial, innovations, have been in finance a long time, started at Goldman, whatever. The characters in this book are amazing. Like you mentioned Brock Pierce, you mentioned DVCini, who have these like really sketchy kind of backgrounds. So it brings you kind of around the world, kind of trying to find, first of all, you spend a lot of time just trying to find him.
Yeah. I mean, all of these guys were great to interview.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point I was in the Bahamas at a Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto event. I learned that Brock Pierce's yacht was anchored offshore.
Okay.
He sent a speedboat to come pick me up so I could come talk to him about Tether. I'm like, it was just very dramatic. And a lot of these guys, I think, sort of enjoyed the being mysterious. Yeah. And I had this great conversation with him about Tether where he's kind of he's a Burning Man guy.
Yeah.
He's a spiritual guy. So he can be pretty intense when he's talking. And he felt like he started talking to me about, we were talking about Tether, but then he's like, this is just like your one shot, your only opportunity. Like you can't miss this. And I'm like, I was thinking to myself, are you talking about your role in the Mighty Ducks? Like, is this a Mighty Ducks reference? Don't. But I'm like, don't. But I think what he was really trying to say was, this is so significant that if you're, don't report this story properly, it could really have serious consequences.
I'll have to say, like I was trying to think, if you went back 40 years ago and read this book, it would seem like a dystopian sci-fi novel. The characters, or maybe like an acid trip, the way like the characters, the scenes that you painted, it's incredible. But I want to get back to Tether, and you talk about how they get traded on exchange. So there are a lot of different crypto exchanges, and one that was really tied to it was Bitfinex. So talk about how the crypto exchanges work and how Tether was connected to this exchange.
So the same guys who own Tether also had this crypto exchange called Bitfinex. Tether is not selling tokens to like just anybody.
Okay.
Essentially, Tether only deals with a relatively small number of professionals who are maybe wiring them, millions of dollars at a time to buy lots of Tether tokens. They could then take those tokens to Bitfinex or to another exchange and use that capital to trade with. Luckily for me, when I started looking into this system, I found that actually this crypto reporting outfit called Protos had produced a report of who were all these traders who were buying Tethers.
Yeah.
And what they found was that almost half of them, $30 billion worth, were bought by a firm called Alameda Research, which was run by Sam Bankman-Fried, who at the time he's 29 years old. He's got this big mop of curly hair.
Yeah, he's the one on the cover here, right?
Yes. And he was like the crypto genius.
Sure.
And the idea was that he'd worked on at Jane Street, which is a pretty well-regarded trading firm on Wall Street. His pitch was sort of, I learned how like real financial markets work. I'm going to take that expertise to crypto, and I'm just going to clean up by trading against all these amateurs. And it seemed like it was working. And so he had his Alameda, which was kind of this hedge fund that was buying and selling a lot of tethers. And then he started his own exchange called FTX, where by the time he started FTX, if you're not familiar with these crypto exchanges, it's basically just like an app that you download on your phone, like E-Trade or DraftKings or whatever. But and you can just deposit your money normally. Instead of buying a share of Apple or betting on the Jets, you are just betting on the price of Dogecoin or something like that.
Or Dogecoin.
Yes.
So, but the exchanges are supposed to be safe, right? They're supposed to be where people deposit their money, and it's supposed to be a place where they can get out and trade. But as we know, there have been a lot of frauds and also a lot of hacks at these exchanges.
Yes. I mean, pretty much. So the one of the first really prominent exchanges was called Mt. Gox.
Yes.
The person had originally intended to start a Magic the Gathering exchange for the like collectible cards. So that's what the name comes from. And that exchange, like, it collapsed. People are still sorting out whether they're going to get their money back, a decade later. Tons of exchanges get hacked. And Bitfinex was a victim of a hack early on that could have done them in. They lost something like a third of their money to these hackers who, it turns out...
This was in 2016, right?
Yes.
A little before you got into reporting, but this was a well-reported stories. But yeah, you would think a very sophisticated group of hackers.
Right. This was like I say in the book, I felt like Tether was quilted out of red flags. And this is another red flag, which is that the people that hacked Bitfinex, their exchange, the exchange run by the same people behind Tether, were this couple, and the wife had a very colorful online presence where she went by Razzlecon, and she had seemingly spent some of her ill-gotten gains to produce these like kind of slick music videos where she's just like the world's most terrible rapper. And in some of the raps, she's sort of rapping about hacking, I'm going to steal your password. No, it's since come out, she was not the hacker. The husband did the hacking. She was accessory after the fact. She's pleaded guilty and is awaiting sentencing. Actually,
still awaiting sentencing.
I met her at the Bitcoin conference this year. She was out on bail and I think looking for a job, which was a real highlight for me.
I'm sure.
Memories are so short in crypto that these like spectacular frauds and hacks can happen and people just move on. I'd be like, oh my God, that's Razzlecon. People are like, who? Like, she stole like $5 billion. It's pretty cool.
That's what's so amazing, right? It seems like the people who started it are, again, have these questionable backgrounds, or these people who are hackers or whatever. Everyone involved seems to like be able to like resurrect themselves, and everyone has this amazingly short memory.
People in crypto were not telling me, oh, don't look into Tether, that's all on the up and up. They were telling me, yes, we buy and sell billions of dollars of Tether, but actually we share your skepticism and think this could, we're not that worried about it, but like we also have like, could this be the CIA? Like they're full of conspiracy theories themselves. Yeah,
and it was supposed to be. You said, well, it was supposed to be backed by a bank. That leads you to Bahamas again.
So when I started looking into Tether, there was one bank that was willing to say, yes, we have some of Tether's money. And it was run by Jean Chalopin, who his claim to fame is that he was one of the creators of the cartoon Inspector Gadget.
So now we have the Mighty Ducks, the creator of Inspector Gadget. This is amazing.
It was just, and he was very graciously agreed to an interview away. He had a big painting of Inspector Gadget on his office door because he'd become, he had a remarkable career in animation and became like a mogul of entertainment. And this banking was sort of like a retirement job.
Just a side gig, right?
Yeah. But we sat down in his office. He makes himself a cup of tea, and then he pulled down this book from his bookshelf called Misplaced Trust, I believe, and then started. He's like, the things people do for money, and I was like, what a line! I can't believe you're saying this to me.
Right.
So he told me, yes, like I hold some of Tether's money, but I can't vouch for all of it. Okay. And I was able to. This is still like in the early part of my investigation, but I found some documents that showed that Tether had invested some of its portfolio in Chinese commercial paper, which was, this is like short-term debts of Chinese companies. Most US money market funds, like more regulated entities that are similar to Tether would not invest in this because it's viewed as risky.
The Chinese companies were viewed as risky.
Yeah. In the end, it did not blow up, and that turned out fine for them.
Okay.
But it was just a little bit different than you would have expected. I mean, you buy these Tether tokens, they don't pay you interest.
Right.
All you care about is that the money is there when you go to redeem them. But if you're Tether the company, you're sitting on this pile of $50 billion. The temptation is to go invest that into weird things. And so this Chinese commercial paper was one of those weird things. Now, the situation has totally changed now because interest rates have gone up.
Right.
And Tether now has, spoiler alert, but Tether, they've got $100 billion. They invested in U.S. treasuries mostly, they say. At 5% a year, the company's throwing off, $5 billion a year. And the plastic surgeon, Giancarlo, Forbes just ranked him, I think, the second richest man in Italy. Oh my God. So the rise in interest rates makes Tether a really great business.
Because they're able to invest and make these safe investments, and it's just because there's so much of it.
Yeah, they've got this huge pile of money. They can invest in safe things, collect, and they don't have to pay interest.
But that's where FTX got in trouble. So around this time, you talked about you were at in the Bahamas for a crypto conference, and I think it was the FTX conference, and you were able to sit down for a brief interview with Sam Bankman-Fried, and he talked about something interesting that you came back to later.
Once I found out that he was a big user of Tether, I thought, all right, this guy probably does business with the Tether guys.
Sure, you saw him as a source.
Yeah, he might know what's really going on.
And at the time, he still had his reputation, and he was doing all this big stuff. Right?
Yeah, and I also thought, hey, he's an interesting character. I could write about him for whatever's going on with him.
Sure.
It'd be an interesting part of the story for Bloomberg and for the book. Most CEOs, as you know from being in the PR business.
Sure.
Most CEOs, I mean, any sort of interview is very stage managed.
Of course. If they have good PR, right?
Yeah. With Sam Bankman-Fried, I was like, I want to profile him for Bloomberg. I'd like to come down to the Bahamas and hang out at the office. I want to see him in action. And they were just like, sure. And I got down there. I'm in the break room chatting with his assistant, and he just wanders in. He's got no shoes, these white crew socks, the cargo shorts, looked like he hadn't, slept in days.
Right.
And he reaches into the cabinet. He pulls out a packet of like chickpea korma, like one of those microwavable things you could get from Trader Joe's. He does not microwave it. He just rips it open and starts spooning it into his mouth. And the assistant is like, hey, this is the reporter who's come down here to read about you. And he's just like, oh, hey.
Right.
And like we'd met before, but I had no confidence that he remembered that or that he knew that this was a big thing on his calendar.
Sure.
And he just let me pull up a chair, and I'm looking at him. He's getting emails from billionaires. Some people are pitching him on buying companies. The CEO of a bank was like pleading for like, I'm in the Bahamas. Can we meet for 5 minutes?
Right.
He's like, eh. So I'm sitting there looking over his shoulder. He's doing an interview on NPR.
Yeah.
Or no, he's giving a speech to this August economics club of New York that like central bankers give speeches at. As he gives the speech on another screen, the speech is over Zoom, on another screen of another one of his 6 screens, he pulls up this video game called Storybook Brawl and starts like casting spells on the other wizards. And I'm just like, who is this guy?
Right.
And then I get another person who, I mean, he's not dumb. He knows I'm there to write about him.
Of course.
And he knows he's giving me pretty good material by playing this video game while giving this speech. And so to what you were asking about, we talked about Tether. He told me, he's like, listen, when I buy these tethers, I really do send them money.
Right.
And they really do send me tethers. And again, spoiler alert, but we've since he's in jail now.
Yeah.
We've had a whole trial.
Right.
And all this evidence that came out at the trial suggests that, you know, he really did send money to buy tethers. Because there were theories that maybe Tether was just sending him the tethers on credit. Anyway, he said to me something that's in the opening chapter of the book where I was sort of explaining what I was working on.
Sure.
And and how, you know, how I had this challenge that I had to write this whole book. And he was just like, yeah, it would be cooler if like this was all about like like a giant Ponzi scheme, huh? And I'm like, I don't even think it's one of those things I maybe,
right.
I don't even know if it stuck with me in the moment.
Sure.
When I was listening to the interview after everything that went down, I was like, oh, wow, Sam, were you trying to send me a message?
Right.
To make his openness even more surprising, like not only is he giving me access that most CEOs would not, he's running a giant fraud while he does that.
And eating bad vegan food that's unmicrowaved.
Yes. Which really won me over as like kind of a slob myself. I thought like...
Right. It was almost relatable. Like you said, he knew what he was doing, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people have wondered, was his whole persona just an act?
Right.
And my take is that he embraced his natural persona.
Yeah.
Like he understood it was an option to get a haircut and put on a suit. And he was like, no, I think actually being myself, or maybe even playing up my slovenliness and my distractibility would make me more appealing as like the boy genius of crypto. And he was right. I mean,
he was right. It worked.
It helped a lot.
Right. You're an investigative reporter. You don't fall for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And to me, I think one of the ways Sam Bankman-Fried won me over was that he presented as sort of skeptical of crypto himself.
Right.
And he wasn't like, oh, yeah, this is all going to the moon. This is the future. He would acknowledge that most of the coins were scams. And he was saying, as I said before, like his trading firm could clean up trading against people with less skills. And then also that his exchange would be, as long as people wanted to trade crypto, it'd be a good place for them to do it.
Right.
And that he wasn't really taking a position on crypto prices.
No,
the truth is that he had in fact stolen all the money out of the back of the exchange, taken it elsewhere and gambled it on crypto prices going up.
Right.
So, including, you know, betting on Dogecoin. So,
just like your friend.
Yes.
Which seems amazing. And you talk having these moments like you just can't believe it. Like, yeah, he's doing the same thing that my, you know, your friend is, who's, you know, not running a big exchange. So let's finish that thread a little bit, because, you know, you're going around, you do a lot of, you know, reporting and following the Tether trail. And then the news does break about SBF and the exchange that he was running, FTX. He's not yet arrested, but he's still in the Bahamas. You go down there. So this is now in 2022?
Yeah, like in November.
Okay.
So
yeah, so we're fast forwarding a little bit, but you go down there after everything breaks, and you're hoping to get an interview with him.
There was this couple week liminal period where some people like Elon Musk were like, he'll never get arrested. The Democrats will protect him. And then other people were like, I don't think it was a fraud. Like Bill Ackman. He was like, I think maybe it was an honest mistake.
Until he read the charges.
Yeah. And so my position was, as soon as it failed, it seemed pretty clear that it was a big fraud. There was no legitimate explanation for how the customer money could be gone. You know, because like at the casino, when you go cash in your chips, like they're supposed to have the money. And
let's just explain that real quick. So as an exchange, you can't take that money. It's supposed to stay there. You can't take that money and then go invest it in risky stuff, which is what they did through the Alameda research.
Yes.
Okay.
And it also seemed pretty clear to me that if anything, he would be made an example of, because, you know, if politicians had taken his money, they'd feel ashamed. They wouldn't want to be associated with him. They'd pressure for more or also if you're a prosecutor, you're ambitious, you want to make a big case. It just didn't seem likely that he would skate somehow. But Sam's a great, well, he's challenging an interview in some ways, but he'll answer any question. Like the answer he tells you may not be true,
right.
but it will be like a thoughtful response to what you asked.
Right.
So I thought I would love to hear there'd be some value in getting his side of the story, and asking some probing questions about what went down.
Yeah.
And at the time, he'd given some interviews, he'd posted some stuff on Twitter, and it was very confusing.
Yeah.
And so my pitch to him was that, hey, I may not agree with whatever you say, but what you're saying right now, it isn't making a lot of sense.
Right.
And I will spend the time needed to understand what it is you're trying to say.
Right.
And I will present that in the story. I'm not going to present it necessarily as the truth, but I'm at least going to
give you that
hear you out.
Yeah.
And so,
were there other reporters like this? I could imagine like everyone was, I think you set the scene, like there were like news vans everywhere. And there were a lot of reporters down there. How'd you convinced him, but how did were there other reporters getting in there?
It was pretty funny. So I went to FTX was planning to build this giant headquarters.
Right.
They had broken ground on it, but it hadn't been built. So it was going to be in the shape of an F, or maybe in the shape of Sam's afro. I can't remember. But maybe both. So I went out to see the field where the exchange would be built, thinking that maybe this could be a interesting thing to describe in a story. So much of crypto is virtual. Here, this is as close to like the wreckage as you're going to get.
Right. Yeah,
so as I'm having my planned poignant moment, a friend of mine who writes for New York Magazine walked up.
Okay.
And I'm like, you totally ruined it. The scene will not be going in the book. And yes, there were people trying to get Sam on camera because they wanted to make documentaries. At the old FTX offices, there were photographers with telephoto lenses and news crews. I think part of it was that I'd written, after my first visit with Bankman-Fried, I'd written a profile of him for Bloomberg. The main question that the story had was, he says that he's only gotten rich in order to give it all away.
Right.
Will he actually do that? Right. Or will the pursuit of this wealth corrupt him along the way?
Sure.
And the story had not been like FTX is a big scam. So I think that maybe he saw me as potentially friendly, but also I was pretty pushy about the wanting to talk. And I spent a long time thinking about crypto. Yeah. Some of the other people who wanted interviews were like Good Morning America. Right. So they maybe would not know what questions would like get him going.
Yeah. So you worked your way in and you talked to him. Is this true? You were there for 11 hours?
There were some breaks. Right. So when I first went down there, this was not part of the tour, was this penthouse. He had this $30 million penthouse in the nicest resort in the Bahamas. But on his rise, he tried to avoid talking about things like flying on private jets or having this penthouse. He tried to present himself as someone who really was not about the trappings of wealth, and who, because he believed in effective altruism, planned to give it all away.
Right.
So this second interview was my first time at this resort called Albany, which was really like the richest feeling place I've ever been.
Sure.
I mean, you got it's a sort of yacht marina for 200-foot yachts that's ringed by these 7 condo buildings. I wasn't sure what to expect. I had no idea if Sam was all alone.
Right.
Could he be feeling like despair?
Right.
What?
You had no idea his mood or his attitude.
And he, greeted me in the lobby of the building, and it was like exactly the same guy wearing the same outfit and with the same mood. And he seemed like he was still kind of. I wasn't sure if he was putting this on, but he was still acting like he was going to save the company. He was going to find, because basically there was $8 billion missing. Right. And so if he could find someone who would put up $8 billion, then they could fill the hole and that person could take over the company. It kind of, it's not like he could not find someone to do this, but the exchange had been valued at $32 billion for just a fairly recently. So had there been, his pitch was like, hey, pick it up on the cheap, fill this
Sure.
hole, and let's keep it rolling.
8 billion, just a little loan.
And he had actually approached, I learned, Giancarlo, the Tether guy, and Giancarlo was like, wasn't interested.
Right.
But that's by that point, Tether was one of the few companies that in crypto that actually had
so
this
Tether's
kind of money.
Like this cockroach that won't die, as you say, like it's still the backbone here, still alive.
That's kind of a funny part of the book. And I think Tether in the end turned out to be a great subject for the book.
Sure.
But in hindsight, I mean, you could have picked so many other crypto companies as the one to investigate, and so many of the biggest ones from when I started blew up. And Tether did not.
It's still there. As of today, right? We're taping, but some news broke just a few days ago that it is being investigated.
Yeah. So Tether now keeps their money mostly with Cantor Fitzgerald, which is like a mainstream Wall Street bank. Okay. So there's more confidence that Tether has the money that they say they have.
Sure.
This was on the front page of the Journal the other day.
Yeah.
The U.S. is investigating Tether over anti-money laundering violations. And that's like potentially criminal. Now, Tether has said, we cooperate with law enforcement. We would have heard about this. We didn't.
Yeah. So it's still happening. So you have an additional chapter. Then you might have to put out another edition. more.
The crypto thing.
It's the gift that keeps on giving, right?
It never ends. This use of Tether actually, like as I started out wondering about like where is this $50 billion? By the end of the book, I was more interested in who are the people that are really using Tether and I did some looking into whether Tether was being used by criminals to facilitate.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because there's this thing called pig butchering. And so one of the routes it led you on was to Vietnam and Cambodia because it's being used by criminals. Talk about how it led you there and what pig butchering is.
I was getting these messages at the time, and a lot of my friends that were text messages that appeared to be wrong numbers. And it would be like, hey, Donna, did you pick up the cat food for the cat on your way home from work today?
Right.
And these have become it's become a bigger deal, but at the time, less was known about it. As it turns out, if you engage with these people, they will try to befriend you.
Right.
They'll start to drop hints that they are good at trading.
Right.
Trading crypto. And then they will eventually say, hey, if you want to trade like me, download this special app.
Yep.
And acquire some cryptocurrency, usually Tether.
Yep.
Send it to my special app and like watch your money grow.
And people fall for this?
Yes. I mean, real people, smart people lose millions of dollars. It's hard to estimate the volumes of crime, but there's credible estimates that tens of billions of dollars are lost to these pig butchering scams. And I had seen some reports on this that mentioned that Tether was used. Okay. And so I played along with one of them. And when I got a message from this woman named Zeke Faux, and I wanted to see if she would ask me to send her Tether.
You were asking to be scammed.
Yes. So this is like, it took longer than I thought. They're playing the long game. It's called pig butchering because they want to fatten you up like the hog before the slaughter.
Got it.
Once you've sent in, they'll even they'll show you in the app that you're making lots of money. They'll even let you take out small amounts, and they're sizing you up the whole time.
Right.
So someone like you, they might look at your profile online and think, this guy's definitely got, $100,000. I'm not going to stop until he sent in all of that. Then I'm going to steal it all and ghost you or whatever.
Right.
So, but the dark part of this that brought me to Southeast Asia was that many of the people who are sending these spam messages are themselves victims.
Right.
They have answered job ads that said, hey, come to Cambodia for this high-paying customer service job. They get there, their passports taken, they're trapped in like there's whole office towers with thousands of people who are forced to run these scams under threat of their torture, beatings, or even worse. And it's on a huge scale. The UN has estimated that more than 200,000 people have been trapped in these like scam compounds.
And you visit them.
Yes. So I started.
You're very committed. I mean, were you nervous? Like, talk about that.
Well, so I started interviewing people through a complicated chain of interesting characters. I got in touch with mostly Vietnamese people who had worked in compounds in Cambodia and had escaped by paying ransom. They'll let you out if you pay $5,000, $10,000, $20,000.
Wow.
And there was actually this popular Vietnamese YouTuber who was paying the ransoms and then filming videos about his rescues of these people.
Wow.
And it was going viral in Vietnam. There was this one guy who I spoke to quite a lot over like video chat named Twee. And he would tell me the most horrific stories about his time in this compound called Chinatown in Sihanoukville in southwestern Cambodia.
Yep.
So I'm hearing from the people like Twee, hey, in these compounds, we're forced to run these scams. We're using Tether to collect this money.
Yeah.
Victims in the US are saying like, we're sending Tether. And to me, I thought like, because in the regular Wall Street world, if you had a company that had so many red flags, people would not trust them with the money. Even if nothing ultimately was proven to be wrong about them, you'd say, you know what, I'm going to keep my money at a different bank. I'm not going to keep it at the, plastic surgeon, Inspector Gadget, Mighty Ducks Tether fund. So I thought, this might explain some of the popularity. If these criminals are using it to zap money around the world, they're maybe not so, for them, Tether's sort of sketchy vibe might be a plus.
Right.
Now, Tether now says they cooperate with all law enforcement. They'll freeze someone's account if there's a accusation of fraud.
Because that was a different tune from earlier, because you said you would inquire and they'd be like, well, it really depends how much, or... Right?
Yeah.
And so it's a change of tune.
They had this sort of outlaw vibe before that might have... And they're just really popular in Southeast Asia. Yeah. So I thought, I'm not really sure what I'm going to learn by going there, but this story about pig butchering, I mean, it sounds like something out of like QAnon conspiracy theory. Sure. And I just wanted to see what I could see myself and like see if I could believe it with my, see what I could see with my own eyes. And one thing, I had been in Ho Chi Minh City meeting with this guy, this victim Twee, and I was taking the bus to Phnom Penh in Cambodia, and it stopped in Bavet, which is like a casino town just over the border. And I got off the bus to look around because there were a lot of reports of scam compounds in Bavet, and I'd seen videos of people escaping from them. The compounds are often attached to casinos. So in the parking lot of what these videos had strongly suggested was a scam compound, and what local reports had said it was too. Right there in the parking lot, there's a booth that advertised that that they accepted Tether, that you could trade Tether for local currency. Yeah. And I thought to myself, I've been looking into crypto for like a couple of years. Right. And one of the overarching questions became not just like what's behind Tether, but like, is there any point to any of this crypto stuff? Are people using it in the real world for anything? And what I was finding was no. People were not using it for so many of the uses that were the crypto guys hyped were not actually happening in reality. I'm like, is this actually the first time that I've seen like crypto happening in the real world? Right. Is in the parking lot of the scam compound. Like it doesn't prove anything, but I was like, okay, I think maybe there is something to learn here by being on the ground. Yeah, it's amazing. And then you visit El Salvador, which I think in 2021 said it was going to be their official currency, and you visited there to kind of see the impact. Yeah, that was one of the things that sold me on crypto as a topic. At the first Bitcoin conference I went to, it was so bizarre. There was this guy in a hoodie on stage at the end, and he's pacing back and forth and cursing, and he seemed like he was talking about like a surf vacation in El Salvador. And then he's like, Bitcoin is saving El Salvador. And then he hit play, and it's the president of El Salvador on this video, and he's like, Bitcoin will be the official currency of El Salvador. Right. And you didn't believe it at the time. I mean, I just didn't know what this was about at all. Right. And the guy on stage he's bawling.
Right.
It seemed like kind of a joke, but I look around and these Bitcoin guys are dead serious about it. Like some of them have tears in their eyes. They're like, this is the Bitcoin, our Bitcoin future is coming.
Right.
So it was kind of a experiment if Bitcoin could find mainstream adoption.
Sure.
Because you had the president, in fact, did tell businesses they should accept Bitcoin and gave everybody in El Salvador an incentive of $30 to download a particular Bitcoin wallet app. The Bitcoin guys, they would point to El Salvador as this great example of where Bitcoin was actually in use.
Right.
And I got there.
Yeah, what was the reality?
Yeah, they had this surf town that the Bitcoiners called Bitcoin Beach, which is where sort of this Bitcoin experiment got started. I went there. I'm trying to buy a bottle of water at like a roadside store. I asked the guy, he's handing me the water and I'm like, Puedo, I don't speak Spanish very well. I'm like, Puedo pagar con Bitcoin? And the guy says, basura, which like trash, grabs the water and he just walks into the back. Like he's like, there will be no water for you.
No water for you.
Because the attitude was generally like, it was hard to report on Bitcoin in El Salvador because nothing was happening. Nobody was using it. Yeah. It was viewed as like kind of an annoying curiosity for tourists.
Yeah. Again, I need you to tell a story. We're a little, I know we're getting close to time here, but I need you to tell a story because you're so committed and dedicated to reporting that at one point, again, to try to track down some of these co-founders and people to validate your reporting and to get closer to all this, you had to go, there was an NFT event. NFTs are these non-fungible tokens. This was, I think, 21 or 22 maybe. You're going to an event in New York City, and the only way to go is to buy one of them. And at the time, they cost about $40,000. So you have to have a conversation with your wife to say, hey, I got to buy one of these. Just tell me about that and tell me about that process.
A lot of crypto guys would ask me, do you have any crypto?
Right.
And I would say, no. And they would say, well, you can't possibly understand crypto then.
Right.
And some of them would say this to me in pretty
harsh terms.
Yeah.
Rude.
And but I started to think, I don't know. I mean, is there something I'm missing by not investing in crypto myself? I mean, like if you're writing about like the casino business,
right?
Like maybe you can't really understand the thrill of gambling without trying it.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, you know what? And also I'm like, the reader wants to know. They
couldn't you just buy a little Bitcoin?
Yeah. So and this guy was trying to goad me into buying something called Solana Monkey Business. Okay. But at this point I know enough, which so it's like it looks like a monkey that could be, it's an icon of a monkey that could be at home in like NES Mario.
Sure.
And so an NFT means like your ownership of that image is recorded for posterity on a blockchain. And at the time, people were really paying a lot of money for that, as you said. So Solana Monkey Business was $25,000. And I'm like, the guy, again, he kind of got under my skin, but I'm like, I know enough now. I know Solana Monkey Business, this is just a knockoff of the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which at the time, a lot of celebrities like Paris Hilton, Jimmy Fallon, Justin Bieber.
You talk about how Paris Hilton and Jimmy Fallon were talking about on The Tonight Show.
Yeah. So this was like I didn't want some imitation, but the Bored Ape Yacht Club, and these are, instead of like a pixelated monkey, this is more of like a cartoon monkey. Some of them wear like silly hats. Right. And they were going for like the cheapest ones were like $300,000 or $400,000. Wow. And I biked to work here in New York, and in Williamsburg, when I passed through Williamsburg, there was this big billboard that was saying like "No sleep till Ape Fest," and it was like you can go to this week-long concert in the South Street Seaport. There's going to be big names there, but you got to have a monk, you got to have an ape to get in. Right. And so, looking into it, I found that in the ape lore, the apes at one point they drank like a potion, and that turned them into mutant apes, which are like really ugly cartoon apes that are like melting. Okay. And those ones were more like $40,000 for the cheapest ones. Got it. You still go to the party just the same. Got it. So I thought,
That's your
okay.
in, right?
That's my in.
Yeah.
And so I waited for like a quiet moment and sat down with my wonderful and very understanding wife, Nikki, and I also maybe like I was like, okay, I want to buy this thing for the book. At this point, she'd already heard about a lot of crazy adventures, so she was sort of primed for this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I explained like I gotta buy one to go to the party. She'd heard about it from the news or whatever.
Yeah.
And maybe not very nice of me, but I was like, okay, now that you know about this, what's your guess of how much this is going to cost? And she's like, well, you sat me down, so it's got to be a lot. So like, I don't know, $5,000.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, it's $40,000.
Wow. Yeah.
And she was like, oh no. And then, but I explained the party's only a few days.
Right.
These things really did buy. Every day, people were really buying and selling these for real money.
Right. So you can get in and get out quickly. That was
like the odds were. What are the odds it's going to collapse during those exact few days?
Right.
So in theory, we could make money.
Right.
I mean, other people had, and also it's good for the book. I got an advance to write the book.
Sure.
The reader needs me to go.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it. And she was like, okay, I totally understand, but now I'm very nervous. And I quickly became just as nervous because it took me like a couple weeks to get around to doing it.
Right.
In those like 2 weeks or whatever, the price of a mutant ape fell from $40,000 to $20,000.
Right.
So
Which
I'm like,
is good, but also you're like, well, when I have to sell it.
yeah, I'm like, where's headed now? But I was really committed. There's only one ape fest. I'm like, you got to do it. And it turned out that it actually was very informative because we were talking a little bit before about crypto exchanges. Yeah. That's the way nearly everybody who invests in crypto interacts with the crypto world. They might as well be using E-Trade. Right. They're not really experiencing like the decentralization and the supposed benefits of crypto. Sure. But to get one of these apes, you have to get into the real crypto world. Right. And this is where like your wallet address is a string of random letters and numbers. If you make a typo, the money's gone forever. Right. That ape is like, it's on your computer. If you get hacked, the ape could be gone. Everybody was getting hacked. Right. Seth Green, the actor, he lost an ape. He was very sad. He was going to make a TV show about the ape. Right. This art gallery owner in Chelsea lost like $1 million of apes, and he tweeted, "All my apes gone." Everybody was teasing him.
Sounds so ridiculous. Yeah.
And I as an author, I had access to top ape experts, and they were like, you got to put the ape on a thumb drive. Okay. And I'm weighing the odds. Like, am I going to get hacked versus will I just lose it while I put it on the thumb drive? Right. Yeah. Like, I'm not putting it on a thumb drive. Anything could go wrong. And so like every morning I would my compromise was like just turn off the computer. No one can. Right. No maybe they can't hack you if the computer's off. But then I always wanted to turn on the computer to see if the price of apes had collapsed. So it was a very nerve-wracking... Yeah, it was nerve-wracking reading it. One thing... But the reason it was actually informative is like the pitch for crypto is like, this will become mainstream. Like, what if Taylor Swift's tickets were on the blockchain? Right. Some of this stuff can kind of make sense. But in reality, the process of buying this ape was so horrible and so difficult that I'm like, no one will ever do this. Yeah. And the wallet app where you buy the ape made me watch this video that suggested that like the password is like the passphrase is like 12-word phrase or something. Mm-hmm. They were like, the video suggested seriously that I should engrave the phrase on a piece of metal and bury it in my backyard. And I'm like no one's gonna do this. This you'd be surprised how many people will make significant investments in crypto without ever really trying it out. They they might as well be like, they're just numbers on a screen. Yeah. They don't really try out the crypto products. Yeah. So you did sell it. You didn't make any money because you lost some money in fees along the way. Yeah, it did not collapse during the time. Good. But I also... You're still married, right? Still married. No. And Nikki was very supportive of all the taking care of everything on the home front while I was out going to Switzerland twice to go to try to get meet Giancarlo. It was pretty tough. I had to go to the Bahamas 4 times.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable list. The Bahamas, Miami, Switzerland, El Salvador, some dark places, as we said. So just, I want to wrap it up. Has your opinion of crypto changed at all?
I mean, yes. Like now I feel more confident that this will not find mainstream use. The prices are
right. It's come back though, because there was a crash in 2022. It's come back.
So like after the FTX failure, that was kind of the prices bottomed out.
Yeah.
They've since pretty much come back, not just Bitcoin, but lots of other cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's silly to see what they're doing these days. Like if Dogecoin, there's been no like innovation to justify the higher prices. Because I'm kind of an old school guy. I think that value has to come from like people using it, paying fees, making profits.
Sure.
No, like this time around, instead of Dogecoin, I mean they still have Dogecoin, but there was a popular one this time called dog with hat, which is like now the dog's wearing like a beanie. That was worth, people made millions trading dog with hat.
Oh my God. Yeah, I looked today. I think there are still 185 stable coins listed that I saw.
Stable coins?
I thought I went and...
I guess people are always making new stable coins.
Right. I didn't say they all had value, but yeah, I looked at some exchange. There are 178 crypto exchanges.
Yeah.
Names like Spooky Swap, Corgi Swap. I know some of these are probably not valid, but they were listed on some of these coin sites. Osmosis, Yobit, Thorchain.
Yeah. It's like, and look, I'm sure people are listening to this and they're like, you know what? My favorite project is actually good, and here's why you're wrong. Right. And what I would say to that is that for years, people were saying that to me. They're like, oh, the other ones are scams. Mine's good. The people who said that to me are now in jail. And so like, yes, I'm skeptical of these claims. And I've seen nothing has happened in this new boom that suggests there's like a mainstream use. And some of the boom was driven by excitement over a Bitcoin ETF, which allowed, let's say you were afraid of trading Bitcoin on a Bitcoin exchange, maybe for good reason, given their tendency to get hacked or to run away with your money. Now you could buy Bitcoin, in your retirement account through this ETF. That's not a use for Bitcoin. That's just a way for people to buy Bitcoin. Okay. And there's this pitch that Bitcoin is like digital gold. And it's a pitch that a lot of people find convincing. It was amazing at this year's Bitcoin conference, the headliner was Donald Trump. And he said, if crypto is going to the moon, we're going to lead the way. And he said that, I love these like full circle moments.
Yeah, of course.
He was like, we're going to establish like a national strategic Bitcoin reserve. And he said he would do it. I don't think this would work, but he said he was going to do it through keeping the Bitcoins that the Department of Justice, that the government already had in its possession. Yeah. Because the Department of Justice has seized a lot of Bitcoins. Sure. Most of the Bitcoins that the Department of Justice has right now were seized from Razzlecon, who stole them from Bitfinex. So I think they're going to have to give them back to Bitfinex. I don't think that can become like Trump's Bitcoin reserve.
Okay, we'll see. I think you're going to have a lot more material to write about. Zeke Faux, that's your time on Read the Bull. Thank you.
Thanks, Stefan.